Alright. Ooh. If you crack open the Bible and know where to look and then apply some questionable physics and just the right amount of insanity, you will end up with actual calculations that give you the temperature of heaven and hell. So we will do exactly that and find out what the temperature is, so we know whether to bring sunglasses or a winter coat into the afterlife. Spoiler, you definitely won't be needing the code. Let's start with a quite popular calculation that was published in a 1972 article. Step number 1. We take a look at the Bible and find the perfect passage to calculate the temperature of heaven. Easy as that. Isaiah 30:26 reads, "Moreover, the light of the moon shall be as the light of the sun, and the light of the sun shall be sevenfold as the light of 7 days." Technically, of course, the passage is a description of a hypothetical future prosperity, not of heaven as such, but we're just going to ignore it for the sake of this video. Just like we ignore the fact that a total societal collapse will happen by 2030 and that the end of the world is practically inevitable. Bro, what? Okay, according to the 1972 article, that means heaven receives as much radiation from the moon as the Earth gets from the sun, plus 7 times 7, so 49 times as much radiation from the sun as the Earth gets from the sun. So in total, heaven gets 50 times as much radiation from the sun as Earth gets. Again, technically for the people who wrote these texts, 7 times 7 wasn't meant to be 49, but their way of saying a lot, a ton. Mucho. But anyway, using the Stefan Boltzmann fourth power law for radiation, which for our case looks like this, we have the difference in radiation received that we took from the Bible right here. The temperature of Earth right here will be set to a comfortable 300 Kelvin, so about 27 degrees Celsius or 80.6 degrees Fahrenheit. This gives us a temperature of heaven of 525 degrees Celsius or 977 degrees Fahrenheit, which is, wow. That is not cozy at all. The 1972 article continues by looking at another passage of the Bible. Revelation 21:8 tells us that the fearful and unbelieving shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and sulfur. Although this does not allow us to calculate the exact temperature of hell, sulfur is obviously liquid in hell because it forms a burning lake. And a lake of liquid sulfur means that the temperature of hell must be at or below sulfur's boiling point, which is 444.6 degrees Celsius or 832 degrees Fahrenheit. Which would actually mean that heaven is hotter than hell. But keep watching, there's more. Now, if I wanted to promote hell, I would stop right here. But I'm an honest devil, so there are a few silly mistakes in this calculation from the article that I would like to point out and improve on. In 1998, a group of sharp-eyed physicists pointed out that the original "heaven is hotter than hell" calculation had a pretty embarrassing mistake. Remember Isaiah 30:26? The part that says, "The light of the sun shall be sevenfold as the light of 7 days"? Well, the earlier article took that as 7 times 7 equals 49 times the sunlight, but that's quite a weird interpretation, because the passage clearly states that the sun is just 7 times brighter than normal. It shall be sevenfold, like the light of 7 days. So just 7 times, not 49, and of course plus the light of the moon, so 8 times in total and not 50. Okay, let's rerun the numbers with this more modest figure. Stefan Boltzmann law again. The temperature of Earth is still 300 Kelvin, which gives us heaven's temperature at 231.39 degrees Celsius or 448.5 degrees Fahrenheit, which flips the conclusion. So now heaven is much cooler than hell, at least in terms of temperature. And also, heaven now has the perfect temperature to bake deep dish pizza, which means that if you're from Chicago, you'll feel right at home in hell. I mean in heaven. But there's another thing that the original 1972 calculation missed out on, because the temperature of hell gets much toastier as soon as you take into account all the souls that have been condemned to hell. Which, I mean, come on! Keeping souls is the only reason for hell to exist. Stupid 1972 article. So what am I talking about? Thermodynamics teaches us that pressure and temperature influence each other. So if you shove a bunch of souls into hell, the pressure increases. And if the sulfur is to remain liquid as Revelation 21:8 requires of us, the temperature of hell must also rise. But how the hell are we supposed to calculate something like this? In a paper from 1979 in the Science Humor magazine, the Journal of Irreproducible Results, someone tried to do just that. But this calculation assumed let's just say, an excessively high total number of damned souls, around 29 quintillion. However, scientific estimates assume that roughly only 100 billion people have ever lived since the beginning of time. So I made a little graph to show the estimated number of people who have ever lived, based on historical estimates of the world population from around 8000 BC to 2025. My graph here says that approximately 146.5 billion people have ever lived. Yeah, that's more than the rough scientific estimate, but both are only rough estimates anyway, so it doesn't really matter. The important thing is the original number of the paper, my number, and the rough official estimate. See, way better already. Taking into account that Christianity originated around 30 AD and that from the time of its origins only a percentage of the world's population were Christians, with this percentage of course changing over the centuries, I've made this graph under the following assumptions. All non-Christians automatically go to hell, and 50% of Christians go to hell. So the red line shows the increase in souls to hell over time, and the result is that of the estimated total of approximately 146.5 billion people who have ever lived, approximately 125.3 billion people, or about 85.5% of them, have gone to hell, which I think is a fair assumption. It is important to note that the Bible never actually mentions hell in the form we imagine it today, but it does mention the Valley of Hinnom, which became associated with divine punishment as the destination of the wicked for the atonement of their sins. So we now assume that this is where the dead go that don't go to heaven. But more importantly for us is that the Valley of Hinnom is a real place that still exists today, so we can measure how big it is. And if we do that according to biblical and historical sources, we get around 7 square kilometers or 2.7 square miles, or 18.74, 3596, 26 square eagles for my super American viewers. Right, we now assume that your essence or soul is as big in size as you, because that's often portrayed in all kinds of media. Also, all souls can only be stacked in 2 layers, because otherwise those in the middle layers wouldn't get the full hellish experience, since the outer layers would definitely have an insulating effect. So 2 layers it is. Also, we assume both layers are on average about 1 meter in height, which seems fair when you consider the average height between babies and adults. And if you stack all souls as tightly as possible, you can calculate that each soul will need about 0.05 cubic meters of space under normal pressure. But in order to squeeze all 125.3 billion souls into the limited space of the Valley of Hinnom, these souls must be compressed much more. This means that the pressure increases dramatically. If we now do a little Boyle's law action to get the exact increase in atmospheric pressure, and then use the Clapeyron equation, which tells us how a substance's boiling point rises with pressure, we finally know that hell's temperature must be about 1446 degrees Celsius or 2635 degrees Fahrenheit. In other words, when you factor in the sheer overwhelming amount of all the damned souls, hell is now way, way hotter than heaven. And keep in mind, the more souls, the higher the pressure, the hotter it gets. So hell gets hotter over time. Pretty cool. And also pretty not cool? I mean, heaven might have enough sunlight and moonlight to toast you instantly, but hell is basically an oversized pressure cooker with extra steps. Well, I hope you enjoyed my gloriously convoluted calculations. If you want to learn more about the animals with the worst social manners ever, then watch this other video of mine. Thanks for watching as always, hit like if you like, hit that bell, go to hell, and bye!